Anything you don't want to talk about?
Oh Lord.
Yeah, I'll do the intro. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Cockpits and Cocktails. It is one of your hosts, Natalie flyGIRL Kelley, and I have my other lovely co-host on here, Alyssa.
Alyssa.
We have a very special guest, a good friend of mine who was also my roommate at Sun and Fun recently, Stephanie Getz. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Fabulous. Just enjoying some sunshine out here.
Yeah. So Stephanie is in Vegas, and of course Alyssa is now in St. Louis, although she's been in Vegas recently.
We could have crossed paths.
We totally did. I could have stayed there a couple extra days, so I'll be back out there in 2 weeks. So
Well, you should let me know.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, we just got back from Sun and Fun, and we had actually asked Stephanie to be on the show. I don't know, what was it, a couple weeks ago?
yeah.
I think I texted you and I was like, "Hey, would you be willing to be on the podcast?" And I know a little bit about Stephanie, but I'm excited to learn more about her aviation journey and background and all these other things that she's got going on. So I'm looking forward to kind of digging in a little bit with you, Stephanie.
I can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, Alyssa, I'll let you kind of start if you want. Have y'all met, right, at Sun and Fun?
Yeah, we
Oh
met
yes.
at Sun and
We
Fun.
go way
yeah,
back.
We
Okay.
go way back, like 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I didn't really get the chance to really talk to you at Sun and Fun, because we're all going a million different ways in every direction. So, I mean, I guess we could just start with like how you got into aviation, or like where was your start?
Yeah, it's definitely a little more non-conventional. So, like growing up, we always took road trips places. There was never an airplane involved. It was always long road trips with families, and I didn't really get in a plane or really fly anywhere. I think till I was maybe middle school, but definitely high school and into college. And so, for me, my background is I was a newscaster who wanted to be a pharmacist, but instead went into broadcast journalism and then did that for a decade and worked at NBC, CBS, and ABC affiliates and absolutely loved it. Did everything from sports to news to everything in between. It was really an incredible career. Um, but partway through that career in broadcast, I was approached by a flight instructor who I think he was in his 80s at the time, which is awesome that he was instructing still. And also serendipitously, that same week that had been approached by him, when he said, "Hey, you should get into flying. You should try doing a discovery flight." I also met another guy who was a pilot who just happens to now be my husband.
Oh.
And so it all kind of serendipitously came together. And then a couple of years after that, I ended up starting my own business called Good Communications, where I coach and do executive leadership coaching. And so it was a very interesting path where I started out learning a little bit about it and kind of going, I've never even thought about flying. I never even thought this is something I could do, especially because I thought you had to have such a strong STEM background, science, technology, math, all of that, and engineering, when I was a broadcast journalist and by trade. And I realized that so much of it came down to it came down to science and aerodynamics and all of that, but a lot of it was good decision making and critical thinking and really truly a passion for it, because there are a lot of days that can be kind of challenging. And so over time, I got to get exposed to aviation more through flying with my husband. I got to sit in the right seat and get experience there and just observe and do radios and that kind of thing, and then learn from him kind of through osmosis, over that time. And then a few years into knowing him, we were like, okay, this is my time. Why don't we do this? And in a year, roughly a little over a year and a half, I went from getting my private pilot's license all the way through to getting type rated in the CE 500 series for citations, as well as CFI and MEI. So I worked really hard at it, but I was really, really blessed because I also had the opportunity to do that because I was a business owner as well. So I could take the time I needed to spend on that. But it certainly was a lot of hours. and a lot of
Wow.
time.
In a year and a half?
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
That's
Crazy.
intense. Like I'm thinking my private took like 6 months, and I was working full time, but man, what a hustle. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. It's I think when you have the time, but also put your mind to something and have great resources and people around you that can support you and just help you on ground school or questions you have, or just be there when you're like, I can't do this, and they're like, yeah, you can. That was super helpful to have people like that around me.
Well,
Yeah.
what was your intentions in pushing through all of that in a year? Like, did you know you wanted to fly corporate, or like what was your end goal when you started?
It's interesting. I kind of had there was I kind of just had the idea of like, well, why not? I love doing this, so why don't I just keep going? I've definitely lived my life in this sort of way where if there is something that fuels a fire inside of me and really fuels a deep passion in me that oftentimes I didn't even know existed until I jumped into that one thing that I now love, I follow it wholeheartedly, because then the work comes, or the joy from it, or the hobby from it comes eventually from it. That was kind of especially how I got into broadcast. I didn't really exactly have a full intention of what I wanted to do with it, but I did know that I loved telling stories, I loved sports, and I loved being able to be a part of these really interesting, amazing events every day. So let's just see where it goes, and it ended up being a great career. And so with aviation, instead of having a really big goal in mind at the end of it, I was like, let's just see where this goes. Let's keep going and see what happens. And so now I run a little flight training business for multi-engine training. And so I never thought that I would be getting people their multi-engine ratings at all in my life. I didn't even know that existed when I was growing up. And so I let that follow me and kept going and working really hard, and eventually then something came out of it. Now, of course, as I go here, it will be really fun to do some corporate contract sort of jobs, because I'd love to do more of the flying where people actually you work with a family or a corporation. I love that kind of thing. But right now it's just continuing to grow and build my skills, and along the way help people.
Yeah, that's cool. So you and I met it was Oshkosh, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the things, you had brought someone else to me to introduce me, and actually interviewed her. But like, you never told me really anything about your story. It was kind of like, why was I not interviewing her too?
Well, listen, there's a lot of great people around me, and I like to put them first if you can. There's a lot of great stories, and certainly I'm happy to tell mine too. But I think when we lift other people up, we elevate the entire world around us.
Yeah, you do seem like you really enjoy helping other people, and we'll get into some of the other ways that you do that as well. But you wouldn't do it if you didn't like it, and I know that you do it a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel that when we have resources that we're fortunate enough to have, or work hard enough to have, or connections, talents, whatever that is, I just feel that it's our duty to give that away as much as we can. And so I feel that there's so many ways to empower others to then be able to eventually do that as well, and become and build, whether it's wealth or a talent or skills or a passion. I think there's just abilities that we all have to do that and help others in the process. And for things like aviation, I mean, you talk to any aviator, and 99.999%, maybe 100%, will say there is nothing that gives them greater joy than flying. There's nothing like that feeling when you first pull the yoke up on rotate and take off, or do aerobatics or spins or whatever it is. And so I think there's this passion that connects us all, and when we get to introduce others to that and help others achieve that, because there's a significant barrier to entry financially, and just the challenges that come with the understanding and learnings of aviation, and we can help some along that path. I mean, it's the greatest gift we can give them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you feel like when you got into aviation, were you feeling like more of a desire to help than you had before you got into aviation, or have you always kind of been that way?
Well, kind of. I would say yes, and it was always there. About 8 or 9 years ago, I had started a nonprofit in the Upper Midwest, mental health nonprofit after I lost my brother, and so it was always in me to be able to really help and support people in a bigger way after I'd seen so much tragedy and realized, you know what, there's a lot of people really struggling, and there's a lot of great solutions that actually just needs someone to focus on it. And they might take some resources or not very much, but someone just needs to actually do it. And so it was always ingrained in me, especially from being a little kid and, through church and everything with my family and stuff. It was very important for us and just ingrained in me to give back. But when I also saw that you can not only give back, but you can empower someone to elevate them to a whole nother level where they create their own life and create their own like elevate themselves beyond that and actually learn and things about themselves they didn't know existed or were a part of them. I think that's just always been it was a part of me about 8 or 9 years ago when I started that nonprofit. And then when I got into aviation, it was like, well, I saw the template that could happen from all the work that I'd done previously. Why don't we jump into that in aviation too? And then my schedule is now really full.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like the more we do and like want to do in aviation, I didn't realize when I got my private pilot's license that I would even go on to do anything else in aviation. I was just going to fly a plane and stay local, and that was it, until you meet somebody and then you start sharing, and then you don't want to stop sharing, and giving out scholarships, and just like I would rather give than receive, because I'm just like so passionate about it, and it changed my life 100%. So I think giving that to somebody else is just awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. You totally get it. It's an incredible feeling, but it's fun to see them then even pay that beyond and give and support.
Right. If you do it for someone else and someone receives it, then they're much more likely, I feel like, to want to turn around and help someone else out. So if you just kind of keep that going, then that's beneficial to everyone.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of life lessons and stuff that end up being learned along the way. I mean, we've had people that we've given, like they've been able to use one of our aircraft for some flight training. And we said we trusted them. We gave them every ability to use it and everything. And let's just say in that process, there were some growing pains because I think they didn't realize the gift they were being given. And we definitely were very, 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 very generous, and to a certain point. And then I remember after that, they were like, okay, wow, we had no idea how much of a gift that was, because we drained our entire savings just paying for one rating. I can't thank you enough. I have a whole new perspective on appreciation for the gifts that are given. And so it's well beyond even just the flight ratings you give them. It's the training, it's the things they'll learn beyond the check ride that you teach them, but just so much about life too that they learn, and hopefully gain some wisdom too.
Yeah. So you have you also are involved in and I know of one organization, but maybe you're involved in more aviation organizations. And I mean, I know the one that you did recently in Olive Branch, but the female, the F.A.S.T thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll definitely touch on a few of them. So the one that you just mentioned down in Olive Branch is the Luke Weathers Flight Academy. It's part of OBAP, which is the organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, and they have an incredible flight school there that has, I would say, 30, 40, maybe 50 students in awesome flight school that is taking students from private pilot through CFI and hopefully even beyond that. And so we've given flight scholarships to them. And so my husband and I are both MEIs, and in our twin Comanche, we said, well, why don't we just, instead of even giving them the dollars for it, why don't we actually train them in an accelerated course? So let's do it in 7 days. And so we did that for 3 different students there. And those can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000, even $10,000 if you need the hours for those. And so we were thrilled to be able to give that to them. We've actually even donated an aircraft to them for them to use for some single engine. And then with F.A.S.T, the female aviators sticking together, Love that organization. I'm a board member there, and that's roughly 12 or 13 plus thousand female pilots worldwide. So I know you ladies are members there, and it's all certificated pilots and beyond and above. And that organization, I think, is so unique because what they are is such a platform for a community of support for female aviators. So F.A.S.T is a nonprofit. We give scholarships out, anything from type ratings to helicopter to CFI to getting back in flight, as well as one-of-a-kind summits that are a little bit more intimate and personal and smaller, which are amazing. We've got one coming up in this fall, as well as a mentorship program that's certificated. So people actually go through like 18 months with a specific mentor pilot. Well, the platform, one of the great platforms we have is Facebook. So a Facebook page that is dedicated to all these 12,000 plus female pilots that can say anything and can have any issue resolved or any support that they need. Whether it's, I have a check ride coming up, can someone help me? Like, has anyone done a multi-check ride or CFI? Or is anyone in the area? Can they help me out and do some flying? Or even more serious items like harassment and that sort of thing. And but it's just this incredible community that I haven't seen in other industries. And for them to have been able to build that is a true testament to their ability and their passion, the founders, to be able to grow something like that. And so I think I love that organization, and it's fast and running at 1,000,000 miles an hour too. It's exactly what its name is.
Yeah.
And then I also do work with women in aviation. So the local chapter in Minnesota, Stars of the North, I've been on the board there, VP for a couple of years, and that's just been really fun too to do some work with the local chapter, and that's connected, of course, to the national organization or international Women in Aviation, and they do some really incredible stuff as well, equally, especially around a Girls in Aviation Day, which is a worldwide event in September. And so it's fun to be a part of supporting that next generation, those who've never even been introduced to it, as in with Women in Aviation in that space of the Girls in Aviation Day, and then getting to do a lot with F.A.S.T, which is a lot based on, okay, now you have your private pilot, and now you want to get your commercial, or now you got the job. How do you take that next step? That's what they're really focused on, and it's been fun to see all sides and aspects of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the F.A.S.T platform is just amazing because you go on there one day and people are, helping each other train for, certifications and things, or the next day they just need like personal help but I've never seen another organization or anything that like where women are just like really willing to step up and help each other. And, in real life, sometimes we're very, not helpful to other women or, judgmental or whatever. But I think F.A.S.T has really created an environment that it's very open and supportive. And I'm very lucky to have, a support group of women.
Yeah.
Sure.
I've actually seen some comments on there, which I think is where someone may kind of go down a negative path, and then someone else chimes in and is like, "Hey, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna have that on this platform. That's not what we're here for." And I think that's great.
Yeah, I'm glad you've noticed that because we do have a set of values like integrity, honesty, respect, kindness. Those are definitely the core values of it, because it's not going to be a place to bash anyone, period. It's not going to be one of those places. It's going to be a supportive environment that helps each other, and of course challenges you when you need to be, but in being a supportive way that creates a positive place for people to want to keep coming back to.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I saw, by the way, on I don't know if you saw it, the Women in Aviation YouTube video they made where they gave, they kind of recognized who received the scholarships and stuff. I saw your scholarships. You had 2, right?
Yeah, we did. We also gave 2 scholarships through Women in Aviation. So same thing. We love our multi-engine rating scholarships because it's just, for us, we know that's the gateway to the big jobs, and it's also, I think, the most fun to fly multi-engines.
Yeah.
But I love them all. But we wanted to give one away, and it was a financial scholarship to be able to get their multi-engine rating. And then, you know what, we saw all these applicants, and we were like, you know what, there's at least one more that we want to give away. So we ended up giving another one where we trained the individual, and we're able to give them their multi-engine rating. And so, you know, for us, we get as much out of it as they do, because we love to see them take flight another level. We love to see people learn things and get this aha moment, these breakthroughs, and it's so much fun, and the people are so passionate about it. If they've gotten to this level where they need a scholarship and want one and go after it, they are all in, and we appreciate that, because if there's one thing that so many of the things that we're looking for in scholarship applicants are force multipliers. So when we give, it's going to multiply tenfold in their abilities as they go into life, the impacts that they'll make, maybe the ways that they'll give back someday in life. And so we want to see people that take the initiative, that people that have the passion, and that work really, really hard with a great positive attitude. It's just that, period.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Now, you said that the multi-engine, you said this when we were at Sun and Fun, and you kind of mentioned it before, is kind of your thing. You really like that. Why? Why is that?
Well, I think so. There's always an ongoing ever debate of what's safer. Is it a single engine or a multi-engine? A lot of people will say multi-engine because you have two engines, but some say if the engine goes out, you don't control it right. I mean, so I'm not even going to get into a debate about that. But I personally like to have more engines if possible, from a safety standpoint. But more often than not, they're faster. So me not being really introduced to aviation until I was well into my 30s. I mean, being on airplanes, of course, but not really truly being the GA, general aviation side of things. If I would have been introduced when I was like 10 or 12, I don't even think there would have been a question as to whether I would have tried to go into the Navy, Air Force, or Marines to be able to be a fighter pilot, period. I love speed. And so so generally twin engine aircraft are faster. I also think you have more opportunities in the aircraft you're flying than the types of aircraft, because you have a lot of great multi-engine airplanes. As I've gotten into the citation series, I've really truly found my true love is in citations. They're like little Ferraris of the sky, amongst other small mid business jets. They're so fast. They're beautiful. They're so capable. You can go up to 45,000 feet in ours, and then as you're coming down, if you're going through icing or any significant weather, the thrust on the engines is so much, and all of the anti-ice de-ice is so much on the aircraft. You're generally going to be fine going through even some tough stuff. So it's when you have the capabilities and the speed, it's really, really, really fun. But then you also have twice the maintenance and twice the potential problems if you do have some maintenance issues, because you have two engines.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how complex that would be.
Yeah.
Natalie, have you done your multi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't done multi, so I'm sitting here thinking of doing stalls and steep turns and those kinds of things in multi engines, and I'm just like, oh gosh,
Well, maybe you'll have to come for a little discovery flight with us then sometime, because I think it's more complex, but as you take a step into a new aircraft, generally taking a step into one that's more similar to the previous one you've had, it works, such as a twin Comanche or a Baron or a Duchess of some sort, like a light twin, you could handle. If you were taking a step into a Citation or a Boeing, a 737 or something, that'd be, obviously a significant jump.
Yeah.
And the big difference is, when I tell everyone around multi-engine training, the biggest differences, or I should say, mostly what they focus on, is just often what they're focusing on in the check ride and the training and everything is a lot around, okay, you have two engines, which is fantastic. But if an engine goes out, there's considerably different things that happen versus a single engine. When a single engine goes out, you're looking for a place to land and you're gliding and all of that. But if an engine goes out on a multi-engine, you still have so much thrust coming from the other engine that you can yaw and roll. And so you have to counteract that and do certain things in the aircraft called the drill and a couple other things. But that it's those big differences in the training that it focuses on. But the stalls, power on, power off, accelerated, are very similar to your single engine work. And the pattern is very similar, just a little bit larger. So it is definitely doable and really fun.
It is very fun. Yeah. The first time I took off in the twin, I think I did mine in a it was some kind of Piper. I can't remember, but I thought, holy moly, this thing is fast.
Yeah, it climbs at 12, 13, 1400 foot per minute versus the 500 foot per minute or so in like a Piper Cherokee that I trained in, or a Cessna.
Yeah, right. It was so fun. I was like, oh, this feels like a little fighter jet kind of. It was cool.
It's fun.
I got to fly with my CFI just because he needed to ferry it. So I got some hours in it, but we didn't do any training or anything. Like wrapping my head around like the training of it, I think is just like complex, and I think the accelerated course would definitely be something that would be very beneficial to people just to be in that environment and kind of get used to that.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think that there's huge benefits to accelerated course, and there's also things to know about it. So the course that we do through Getz Aviation is accelerated course, which is like, it'll be maybe 6 or 7 days, and it is flying every single day, couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the afternoon for the entire week. And then the other portion of that, of course, is ground school. And we give you documents beforehand to study and learnings all around multi-engine operations, around VMC, which is the minimum controllable airspeed with your critical engine out or one of the engines out. So it's so much around just the multi-engine operations piece, and then systems and performance and a few other pieces around if it's commercial operations. But the training is think of it. I mean, you might condense a month down into 6 or 7 days, and I try to prepare people for that, to say you will do nothing else in these 7 days but fly and eat, breathe, sleep, everything aviation in this time. And otherwise, it's probably going to end up getting extended because it's just so much, and you're learning so much. It's like a fire hose. But it's totally doable, and we've had many students do it just fine, and there's a lot of accelerated courses that can do it. But if you get in the mindset where you say, that is all I'm doing for 6 or 7 days, no work as much as possible, and other pieces, and of course taking breaks where you need to, that's very important. But really focusing fully on that, you can do it. Like I know, Natalie, you did your CFI kind of in that way.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, because several people, have reached out and asked more about that, if it's really possible. And really your mindset has to be, I'm not doing anything else, and I even told them in the evenings, okay, so you fly twice a day, and then in the evenings you really go back and you study more. So you're not chilling.
No.
Yeah.
It's until the time you wake up, till the time you go to bed.
Yes.
If I were to do it, I definitely think like knowing these ins and outs are very important. Knowing what to expect. And I think, for me, I'd want to have like everything studied, but then like be kind of reviewing it more so every night, instead of having to like, then you're behind the airplane, or you're behind on your studies and you're struggling, and then you're stressed. And so I think going into it with that mindset of like, this is all I'm doing for a week, and kind of getting yourself prepared is beneficial.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If you go in with, and I always do a video call beforehand and go over in about an hour and a half or so, the check ride, the everything they need to know, what's going to be on the check ride, and what the training will be like, then they're really prepared then. And I give them all the documents. They can get them on the website, so they can access all of those, which is great. And then I say, if you want to get the most out of this training and make it the easiest for you, study now. And if you're going to be here in 2 weeks, study now and know all these documents cold, and then we'll dive deeper into them. But then for you, it's just a little bit of a refresher because once you get in the airplane, there's a lot to learn. And if you haven't used a variable pitch or a constant speed propeller aircraft, that's a little bit of a learning curve too, a totally doable one. But you're trying to minimize because, as we all know, flight training can be mind-numbing and so exhausting. And you just feel like you hit a wall or a plateau. And it happens, but those who are able to get through it are the ones that really, really succeed. And so far, we've been really, seeing a lot of all great, really, really great students.
Yeah. So you're talking about video chatting with your students before they come, and I'm sitting here listening to you, and I know some of the things you do in your business has a lot to do with coaching and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, I mean, this just seems like I love it when things just kind of fall into place, and you have all these, your experiences have led you to a certain spot, and probably, and maybe you can talk about this, your past career as a broadcaster, what you're doing now in your business. How does all that make you a really good instructor?
Well, it's funny. When I first got on the radios for the first time, I didn't have any problem because I certainly didn't know exactly what to say, but I had no problem broadcasting to the tower or ground or whomever from inside the aircraft because I was so used to talking to thousands, tens of thousands of people every night, over 5,000 newscasts. And so that was, it's a really good question because I think there are some things in life we don't know what they're preparing us for, and we don't know how it will fit, but it does. And as a broadcaster, as a journalist, like a boots on the ground reporter where you're going out and having to get stories, you have to be incredibly resourceful because you're going out and getting a story and you have no idea if that other person will talk to you about this, if you are able to track down the right information, if you're able to put something together in time for a 5 o'clock newscast when you just started at like noon or even 9 a.m. And so you're always finding ways to get what you need to be able to get the right information out there. And that resourcefulness has really, really been one of the things that's been really helpful of being a pilot because you do have to be resourceful in the cockpit. You do have to be trained and study. And you also have to know and bring that out in emergency situations or any situation. And I then think as well in learning how to be a good communicator and over the years, I still learn today from my students how to be a good communicator to them because I'm learning more from my students than I feel like than they're learning from me, even though they say they learn a lot, which is good. But I'm always learning something new from them. Like, okay, someone who I thought knew everything about high-speed aircraft because they had flown fast aircraft that were single engine or had been in other multi-engines, I may have assumed that they knew what they were doing and maybe didn't explain it as well. And I realized every new aircraft someone sits in and gets in is completely new. And treating them all from the ground up as the same was a really, really helpful piece to help me then be a better communicator to them. Not laying it all out or talking down or anything, but it was more like, I'm going to explain this in such a good way to every single one of them so they know the basics and foundation from the beginning and not assume anything, which I think is I know in my training when I coach executives on how to be great communicators and leaders and inspiring, they have to come with a point of curiosity versus assuming people know things. Because when we start doing that, we assume wrong half the time. And so that's helped me be a really great, I think, as a CFI, being a great communicator, but also the EQ piece, the emotional intelligence, has to be at like a 15 for really good flight instructors because everyone reacts to stress differently. And I will sit next to someone, a student in the cockpit, and one of them is doing just fine. We're flying the ILS on one engine and they're doing great. And I'm, okay, you're doing great, and maybe give some tips or watch out, don't do this, and helping guide them. And we get down and all of a sudden, they're like, I can't do it. Nope, I'm done for the day. And I'm like, you were doing great. What happened? And now I've learned that little things like from different types of people responding to stress different ways, I can see so much more. And when someone is getting to their threshold, like can't learn anything more today, I'm done. And helping work through that and say, all right, let's take a break. You do need a break. Let's go on to something else, or let's take a break for the day and go home. And so I think all of that has really helped me learn and observe and listen more than anything. And the CFI of, just like your private pilot and just like any other rating, is completely a certificate or a license to learn. And I learned so much from my students, and they teach me things every single day, and it helps me then be a better instructor beyond that.
Yeah, true. I've got a couple students, and one of them I went flying with the other day, and he has another instructor as well. So he's trying to use two different instructors, and I hate it because I'm like, has your instructor told you this? Because we don't communicate, me and this other instructor. So assuming that they haven't, like, has your instructor talked to you about this? Because I just want to make sure you understand, blah, blah, blah. And just doing that. And I think Alyssa and I have talked about that before when she went flying with me. I assumed that she knows how to fly my airplane. She doesn't know how to fly my airplane just because she's a pilot.
Yeah. Right. And I've had friends that are pilots, that are instrument rated pilots. They have more hours than me. They have all of these things. And then I hand over the controls, and I'm not a CFI whatsoever. And, on final, I was letting them fly it because I was like, why not? And, I was kind of on the controls, but they flared way too early, and I had a panic, and I was like, nose down, like I didn't panic, but like I said something, and he kind of yelled back at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, it's just like those tense situations. And I think about being a CFI and like how well you have to read your student and how you have to communicate. And it's like a relationship. And, when I was doing my flight training, it was, he was very laid back. He was very quiet. So I guess we got along fine, but I've never had the other kind of end of the spectrum where they were like yelling at me or anything. But I think you definitely, like, you have to have a good instructor. You have to mesh well. You have to be able to communicate. I remember crying like under my foggles, like, and I'm like, well, I definitely can't see now. Like, I couldn't see before, but I really can't. I can't take them off because they'll laugh at me. Like, it was just, I think we all have been in those moments of training where it's hard. We're done for the day. Like, you've pushed yourself to your limit, and you're getting close to a check ride, and like the pressure's on. And I think, especially with like an accelerated course like that, I think it would be so much pressure. So I could see where those things happen. And I think CFIs really have their work cut out for them.
Well, I think you end up having like the most immense respect for all teachers, and especially for like all my grade school teachers. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're all saints. But it certainly goes. You're absolutely right. Being able to be cognizant of what the other person's experiencing, and when you need to stop, or when you need to actually go, you can do this. Let's do it one more time. Like, don't let that fear get in the way. Don't let that a lack of confidence. Like, you can do this. And that's the instructor's job too. If they are really talented and there's just their own personal blockage getting in the way, it's your job to push them beyond that in a positive and supportive way, and get them through that. But it's certainly, there's so much patience that goes into being a CFI, and you always try to put yourself in their shoes, that their workload is immense when they're sitting in that other seat, and trying to be patient with them. And sometimes you have to say, we're going to debrief in a couple of hours. Why don't you just, we don't need to talk about this at the moment, because it's not going to be helpful. You can't even hear it at the moment. Let's debrief in a couple of hours. And then there are times where they just want to click through it. So it's not one has been the same. That's for sure.
That's right. And I feel like I'm always trying to evaluate, because each person's so different throughout the flight. I'm trying to evaluate, am I saying too much? How are they responding? Do I need to say more? When are they doing better? When I'm talking more? When I'm talking less? And it's just like this constant, especially when someone you don't even know, like personally, you don't know anything about them. And so you're trying to figure all that out.
Absolutely. And I think one of the best things you can do, and this is part of the coaching I do in my business, is one of the best things we can do is remove all assumption and actually ask them some questions. And so I've started now with my students to, at the beginning of our trainings, ask them, what kind of learner are you? So do you like things more visual, or do you like them written out, rote memorization? Do you like people telling you every step of the way in the cockpit, or do you need me to stay quiet a lot and you just figure it out, and I'll of course guide along the way and correct where needed? You know, where is that? Because one of our students, she was like for one of us, she's like, I can't handle the talking. Like, it's just too much. You need to just let me fly. And it probably wasn't even all that much, but she was just so used to a type of training that was like very silent, and she kind of had to figure it out on her own. So it was like, okay, well, happy to. But then of course, sometimes they learn in there that then you're not helping them, and they're like, okay, can you speak up a little bit, because I need some help.
Yeah. I think it's definitely like interesting. In the beginning of my training, I didn't really know any other female pilots or pilots at all. And now that I'm so aware of everybody's training and how different their training is, and like 141 versus 61 and like all of these things, I feel like I was so judgmental of my own time and like my schedule of, I need to solo at 10 hours and I need to finish at 50 and I need to like be on these points. But everybody is on such a different journey and they have so much other things going on in their life. And I learned things when I was flying of, don't fly when you're super stressed. Don't fly if you had drinks the night before, because you're just going to be mush. Like your brain is just not in it. Just things like that I didn't know until I was in it. And that's, I hope these kind of conversations and like the FAST group and everything, I think it really helps kind of get people through those and not have that judgmental eye on themselves to get through training, because everybody's journey is so different.
Yeah, well, I would totally echo that, Alyssa. I think it's a great point, because I've never seen one student who's done it in the exact same amount of hours. It ranges anywhere in multi-training from 10 to 15 hours, but that is definitely when someone is prepared, they're ready, they've studied beforehand, they've even watched some videos online, they're really prepared and ready to go. And it can push into 15 to 20 hours for those who aren't as skilled in a certain area or just can't conceptualize all of it. And so you definitely not giving yourself and just having some grace for yourself, because you do the same thing for someone else, but we're really harsh on ourselves. So to giving yourself that grace and saying, okay, what do I need to do to get better then? What do I need to do to accelerate myself in this next hour or two of training, versus being so tough?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things that we talked a little bit about when I went through private was actually learning what kind of learner I was. Like, I never really knew. And they were asking me, I was like, what? I don't know. And it was like figuring that out. And, you know, I use that all the time now, because I know what works best for me. And that was one of the most beneficial things for me ever.
Natalie is such a list person. So I just totally picture like lists and, you know, regimented like schedules and everything. And for me, it's very visual. Like, I went and flew this weekend and we did aerobatics, and I'm like, okay, whatever we just did, when we get back, can you show me on a YouTube video that maneuver and how it's actually done on paper versus flying it? Because I loved being in it and seeing it, but I don't know what that looks like. So it's a very visual thing. And I was a solid C student in high school, junior high, like solid. And I think
it doesn't show now, my dear.
I wasn't interested in it. You know, I didn't have a passion for it. I didn't have something that pushed me. Aviation changed that. And and then it kind of starts to build your mind of like, what kind of learner am I? And what am I good at? And what do I need to really work on to get to the next level? So I think aviation.
That self-awareness is just, that can save you even hours in flight training and learning when you finally realize you learn a certain way. And so any sort of self-awareness that anyone has, even just how they respond to certain things. Do they respond? Some people respond really well to really pointed, direct criticism, and they like it. They're like, just tell me how it is. And others are like, that would just ruin me. So you need to figure out, even for yourself, what can you handle, and what, who are you in that, to be able to receive that information the best, especially knowing that for good CFIs, they have your best interest in mind, and they're telling you these things so you get better, not generally because of anything else. And so that's at the core of it, that the feedback is actually a gift.
So do you have I don't know if you know this or not, but would you say that you struggle with anything in particular with when you're training? Like, do you have a hard time not talking, or there's different things that maybe you struggle with? What are some of those things? Or something?
As an instructor or as a pilot?
As an instructor.
As an instructor, I think what I probably can have the challenge with is when I know the person's capable, and we've gone through it 10, 15 times, and they're still not doing it and getting it.
Yeah.
And that is, for me, it's just hard to see, because I know they have the ability and the capabilities, but at some point as a teacher, as an instructor, you go, I don't know how else to explain this. I don't know how else to get through to you. So what do I need to do? And so, I'll spend time trying to figure that out. And at some point, sometimes you're not the right instructor for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they need to learn from someone else, or actually sometimes they just need a break from that training, and an accelerated course might be not the way for them.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of the area where it's hard for me to see that in someone else. And because I just want to go, well, just do it like this. Here, I'll show you. And it's like, well, that's not going to help, because
it's like they need or something. It's
exactly. Yeah, that's probably. But I have learned over time here, definitely, to get more, to be much more cognizant of how much I say in the cockpit, because they're just focusing on how to hold altitude sometimes, because it's a faster aircraft and there's a lot more going on. And then figuring out just what button is where and what knob does what. And so just being a little bit patient. And I have, changed a lot, I think, in the best way, to be able to just patiently and with the kindest, most respectful, but also direct tone for them.
Yeah.
I honestly think, when I go back to like training, if somebody would have like printed out or told me to print out the panel picture of the aircraft you were learning in, if somebody would have told me that, and I would have printed it, because I was sitting at home, and you kind of want to think about it, and like hand, like chair fly it.
Yeah.
And if I would have had that, like, then you know where to look. Because I think in the very beginning, I was just like, what's happening? Like, I was looking all over at all of these gauges and power. And so had I had that visual, I think that would have worked really well for me. I think it's just, everybody's so different in their learning. And
especially when you go into a training in a different aircraft that's not yours, I couldn't agree with you more. It's one of the best things you can do to chair fly that. But also, too, one of the big things that we encourage our students to do when they come is that make sure you know your instrument approaches very well. Because for the multi-engine check ride add-on, or any of them, if you're going to use instruments with it, if you're instrument rated, you will be doing an ILS approach or a precision approach. You'll be doing an approach. And you have to do it on one engine, and you can do it. It's just fine. It's great. But it's hard enough to do a nice, like, precision in, like, perfectly stabilized approach. It's always a little bit of you're focused, and but then to do it on a single engine is even harder. And so if there's one thing students can do going into any, especially multi-engine, I would say get sharp on your instruments, and even chair fly through approaches, or definitely get out there and just go up with an instructor, or do a bunch of approaches yourself. And the second piece to that is learning what kind of avionics that aircraft has. Because you see a lot of people that they might go from a suite that's a little bit older in the Garmin series, or really brand new glass cockpit. They're doing the same thing, but they definitely have different inputs. And so to dial in a frequency or to activate the approach, some of them you don't have to do all those 5 or 6 steps. In maybe the 430 versus a 750, it's a little bit different. And so that is where I would say people can spend the most time at home or learning on YouTube or whatever, of whatever aircraft they're going to be flying in. Make sure that you know what avionics it is and how to program approaches and how to do them, especially how to do missed approaches as well. So that would really, really, really help the training be less daunting too.
Yeah, good point.
I always felt like in the beginning, I always wanted to fly a Piper because that's what I knew. I knew the 430. Like, I didn't want to fly any other aircraft. So I bought that aircraft. I bought that exact airplane because I was like, that's what I know. What I didn't realize is you get very complacent, or you get very just like in your flow and not looking at the checklists and that kind of thing. Now that I'm in a club and I have 4 aircraft that I fly, and then I fly a lot of friends' aircrafts and that as well, it's made me 100% a better pilot, just because you're always aware of the checklist. You're always aware of, your eyes and knowing where everything is. And before you even start up, make sure you know where everything is. It's a game changer when you're doing the radios and glass cockpit versus steam gauges. And it's a time saver if you could just do it on the ground and know what those avionics are.
Absolutely, because it's not like it's a rental car. You can just pull over on the side of the road if there's something not working. It's in the air. You can't really stop.
Don't waste your time and paying good amounts of money to be learning the G1000.
So with some of the airplanes, I've been flying a lot of different airplanes for this person that I know. I've ferried a few planes, and before I even start the engine, I'm like, okay, now where is everything? Let me make sure I know what I've got here. What kind of GPS do I have? Because they're all different. And it's like, okay, I need to remember how I'm going to do this before I get that Hobbs meter turning or whatever, and start turning the engine. It's like, let me get my bearings here a little bit and see where everything's at.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think for any pilots out there who are listening, and any aspiring pilots or even current career pilots, some of the best advice I ever got is from my husband, who actually has created a checklist of any new aircraft you go into. Here are the things you need to know about it to make sure that you're sharp on. So it's everything from, of course, you need to know the V speeds, what's rotate, if it's a jet or something, V1, V2, and all the performance. So takeoff and landing distances, all those things we of course talk about, but then it goes even deeper into what specific avionics does this specific airplane have? What specific, are there characteristics that are a little bit different on this one versus something else? And everything around that to basically see it as something brand new. So I think, for myself, I've actually made my own checklist into every new aircraft that I fly. And even if they're similar aircraft, I fly multiple different, and they're definitely very, very different as far as size and takeoff and landing distances and all of that. And I've realized I have to go down that and go, okay, what are the V speeds in this again? What are weight limitations? What are, all these things? And that's it creates it new each time, and a refresher, but really solidifies to make sure it's the right the right flying characteristics and everything for the aircraft that you're flying.
Yeah. I have a little notepad and a little thing of Scotch tape in my flight bag so that I can write the V speeds down and tape them up on the thing, because I don't want to be looking for them when I'm like, okay, I need to be rotating, but I forgot where I'm rotating.
You don't want to be looking for it then. Please no.
I am like, I can't even dig them out right now on my desk, but I am like the queen of Post-its. And I started using note cards during my flight training, because I'd put all the frequencies down. Like, yes, you have them on ForeFlight or you have them in your Garmin, but I always just would write them out. So like I physically had them in my brain somewhere, and I had them on a piece of paper in case everything failed. I have a backup. You have your V speeds, you have your, just everything. And so I'm definitely the note taker now.
That's good. You can never take too many notes.
Okay, Stephanie. So what's next for you? What's in your aviation future? What are your plans?
Well, maybe it will be like a warbird or a fighter one of these days. Who knows?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think where it will be now is really spending a lot of time in the citation series as well as the multi-engine training. They're my favorite. I love them. And so doing more of that and helping people get their ratings and having people come to me to be able to get them their wings. But we'll see. I am now relatively smart enough to know to never say never about something.
Yes.
And so if it will be the airlines someday, that would be truly incredible. If it's going to be more corporate flying, fantastic. If it's whatever that's going to be, I think ultimately I'm going to let the path lead me there and continue to do as much as I can in the process. I would certainly like to get, so I have my seaplane rating, which is the most fun rating to get, I think.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Like, hi, it's a plane, and all of a sudden it's a boat in 1 second.
Yes.
So that's amazing. But I want to get my multi-engine in that, and we'll see. We'll see about that. That's a really amazing.
Water Wings, I believe it's down in Alabama. So they're one of the few in the country that do multi seaplane. And actually, my friend Andrew's dad is the instructor for them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, maybe I'll have
there
to.
You go.
Yeah. Just seeing where the path will go. So you never know where it will go.
I know. Totally. That's one of the things I've definitely learned. You never know where things are going to lead. You just keep kind of riding out what you're enjoying and stick to it and be open to whatever,
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you anymore, but I do want to say one thing. I want to share an experience that I had with you. I've had a lot of really good ones.
Is it a really bad one?
No, I've only had positive experiences with you.
Oh, good.
But I want to talk about when you came to Cincinnati, and Alyssa and I had that forced landing, and I was scared to death to fly. And I'm gonna try not to cry because I get emotional, but you insisted on coming down and taking me flying, and you knew I was so nervous, and like every bump in that airplane I was jumping, and you're like, it's fine, everything's fine. And we did a little girls trip and went over to this little town in Indiana and spent the night, and it was just really nice of you to take the time and spend the money to fly down here in your airplane and take me up, and I really appreciate it.
Well, Natalie, the pleasure was all mine. I could come visit you anytime. I knew that. I also know it's not easy to be in that situation where you feel like you're completely alone and afraid whether you'll ever get to be able to do the thing that has given you some of the greatest joy. And I knew you needed to get back on the horse, and you couldn't stay off long, and so that easing into it was hopefully helpful.
It was. It meant a lot to me. I'm struggling in a lot of areas with that whole ordeal, so I won't forget it.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure. I had so much fun. We have to go back to French Lick, and maybe look for Larry Bird or something. I don't know, but
I know.
It was amazing. It's a hidden gem. I'd recommend it to anyone.
Yeah.
We definitely need a girls fly-in weekend again this year, so we should definitely plan that.
I think we should absolutely plan that right away.
Definitely. So tell everybody where they can find you on social media and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Aviator Boss Lady, all one word. Aviator, pilot, and of course the Boss Lady part is the businesses that I run. But then there's the websites for Getz Communications is just getscom with 2 M's.com. But you spell my name Goetz, it's German, and then COMM.com. You can just look up Stephanie Getz. Getz Communications as well, and Getz Aviation is also getzaviation.com. So I'm happy to hear from any of you, but it's really been a true pleasure to be able to be on with you ladies. I love and admire you both, and really just love all the things you're doing in aviation to inspire others and help them through any challenges they get through too in aviation. This is a gift to the world.
Oh, thank you very
much. So much. I think this is why we do it. We come together, we we are for the greater good. And I think that's what has made me fall in love with aviation even more than the airplane.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, have a great night. Thank you for listening. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe now to Cockpits and Cocktails. I am Natalie flyGIRL Kelley, and I'm with my co-host, Fly Alyssa. So good night, ladies. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Bye. Great to see you.
Bye.
Bye.